Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Dimes, a college basketball podcast. I'm Matthew Brune, and joining me once again is Jamie Shaw. Jamie, how you doing? How was your weekend?
Matthew, man, all good. Weekend's great. It's football season, so NFL fantasy focus on
Yes,
Sunday, a little bit of into Monday. Won all three of my leagues that I'm in, so
Oof, the
that's
best
exciting.
feeling. You
Hey, I
walk
tell you,
around with
man,
your chest out a little bit
it's
more
a
when you
turn
when
after
you.
week one. Week one, I was like, I'm just not even gonna pay attention anymore. Lost in all three leagues and everything. But the last 2 weeks, I've won pretty handily in all three of them. So it's done just enough to keep me back in college football on Saturday and stuff. We're getting back into visits, official visits, and practices and all that.
Yes,
So there's a ton going on right now in the basketball world, and not even to mention 2027 rankings. So diving into film and everything. So yeah, pretty active weekend.
yeah, keeping you busy, keeping you busy. Well, Bruce Pearl also had an eventful weekend, and then into Monday where he announced his retirement from Auburn basketball. We are, like you said, official practices are about to start up, and Bruce Pearl announced on social media. It made Auburn announced it as well that he will be stepping down, and his son will be taking over after 11 years at Auburn. 244 and 123 record, two Final Four appearances. Obviously, an incredible run. I mean, after the first 3 years, he made the tournament every time except for 2021. What were your initial thoughts, and how surprising is this to you? I think we can start there. What was your initial thought when you saw this?
Well, it's one of those things that's been talked about.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of around the industry. Bruce Pearl with Steven stepping in has kind of been talked about over the last probably couple of years. The timing of it was a little bit interesting, but it all made sense in the end. Was it a surprise? Yes. Leading up to it, I had not heard that it was imminent, that it was going to happen immediately, that it was going to happen now, that it was going to happen all that. So yes, the timing of it was a little bit surprising seeing it. But it's not something that necessarily hasn't been talked about over the last couple of cycles, couple of seasons. But it's just really hard to ignore what he was able to accomplish at Auburn. He took over a program that had some success, not a lot of it, and was kind of I was talking to coaches around the league yesterday, and they mentioned the word dormant program when he took over, middle of the road, phrases like that. He took them to two Final Fours, 200 plus wins, the all-time winningest coach in school history. Also, since over the last 60 years, the past seven coaches that they had, Bruce Pearl, since 1963, not a single one of those coaches had a winning record in league play. Bruce Pearl obviously was over 500 over his 11 seasons, 55% win percentage in SEC play at the peak of the conferences. The conference people are talking about being the best ever conference,
Yes.
SEC.
Yep.
14 teams in the tournament last year, 13 players drafted into the NBA last year, just alone out of the conference. And he's winning at that type of clip. It's very hard to ignore what he was able to build the Auburn program into sustainably, especially as you mentioned, the last six NCAA tournaments they were eligible for. He made it to the NCAA tournament with those, including two Final Fours, 11 total wins in those six tournaments that he went to. Just taking Auburn to kind of unprecedented heights, but not only unprecedented heights, he sustained that type of success. Fighting for conference championships, putting them at the top of the conversation, getting number one overall rankings nationally. He really built that program into a force.
Yeah. I just look at the history of Auburn before he got there, and from 1961 to till he got there, and he started getting him going in really 2018 is when he really got him going after a couple first couple years getting his feet wet. They ended the year ranked in the top 25 twice. They made three Sweet 16s and one Elite Eight in those. I'm talking like almost a 60-year span. And then with him, obviously, you have the years that they had the past six seasons where. And then what really strikes me is the fact that he's coming off of his best season, and Auburn's coming off their best season. Like, that was an undeniably all-time great team in an all-time great year where you had all these number one seeds that were unbelievable, and the top of the the sport was insane. And a lot of it was because Auburn. It was like they've had good teams in the past. We've seen them make runs before, but like this team was different to me. And you had Janai Broome, you had Mazzara, and you had all these players and the leadership and the veteran presence. And they did lose a lot from that. So, you do wonder if they were able to return a lot of those guys, but there's a reason why they made it that far. It's because they had so many seniors and so many older players that could play. So like you said, the timing is the interesting part to me here. We are about to start practices. It you wonder, even if he would have done this a month ago, like his son was still would even if he would have done this 3 months ago, his son probably still would have been the guy, and they would have honored his request of, like, letting Steven be the coach. But to do it this late, I do wonder why, and I'm interested to see, I don't know what the past few months have been like behind the scenes for him, if that's mattered at all, if he's been like slowly passing the torch and it's just finally done.
Sure. Well, I mean, you look at what Bruce Pearl built. He coached with an obvious passion. His players all bought into what it was that he was doing. They bought into winning. All his teams were physical, played hard, and what Pearl was able to do was coach in different styles. Every team that he had different personnel. Within those personnel groupings, he was able to coach a different way to put his players into advantageous situations to be most efficient that they could be through different styles of play. Um, some people might say that his team last year was his best team, et cetera, et cetera. Well, that just builds the momentum, setting up, letting his son take over the program when it's in very good standing,
Yeah.
when it's got some expectations, when he's got players on board that are locked in for the season. It's never easy taking over for a legend. A lot of people say you don't want to be the one that follows the legend, but you want to be the one after that guy. Well, Bruce Pearl has done everything to set this Auburn program up in good standing, no matter who took it over.
Yeah.
But you think about Steven. He's been in there. He's been in the trenches with his dad. He's been in the recruiting meetings. He's been in the practices. He's had various roles within the program to kind of see what it took to build it. Bruce. One of the big reasons why Auburn, hadn't had the sustainable success was because they didn't have the vision. Bruce came in and knew what it would take to build a winning program, and he got the administration to buy into that. And now with the administration's backing, Bruce was able to build Auburn into a sustainable program at the top of the sport. He set everything up for who his successor was going to be, whomever it was going to be, for success. Steven, son, was on the bench with him this whole time. He saw what it took. He was part of the practices, part of the meetings, part of the recruiting
Hmm.
method, and he's also seen the transition going from the older way of recruiting and how things were done to the new age of NIL. He's got the younger kind of vibe to go with him of how to navigate through the NIL markets, the social media markets, and all these different changes that the college basketball game is going through right now. So the timing of it and all that, I think Bruce did his best to set the program up into good standing for a sustainable future. And now Steven's coming in, with a 5-year deal and a program that's on solid ground when he steps onto campus. And this is going to be fascinating to watch how he's able to carry that forward.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting. It's going to be one of the bigger storylines of the SEC season, really, because Texas and A&M both replaced their coaches, but the rest of the group in this SEC is still a bunch of people that will be in 20 years potentially vying for like Hall of Fame spots. I mean, we're talking still Nate Oates, or Todd Golden, obviously John Calipari, and you don't have to go through the list of coaches in the SEC, but it is obviously some of the top coaches in the country. And this is where Stephen Pearl, I'm interested just because it is anytime the assistant is hired to replace the head coach, I'm not always as bullish as I am. I think like fans and stuff be like, oh, okay, cool, we'll just keep this going. I think there are times where it's obvious and it works. But in general, I take like a little bit of hesitation just to see what it looks like because especially when it is a legend like this, or really anytime a coach has a ton of success ahead of you, there is going to be a small change, whether it's noticeable or not into the players or whatnot. Like there is a small change, and so I'm interested to see. Steven is not Bruce as much as he is his son, and as much as he's been working for him this whole time. There will be, a slight personality change. There will be a slight change in some details, and as we know, this is a sport where very, very small margins are the difference a lot of times. So I'm very, very curious to see how he looks. He has a good team, just if we want to touch on it real quick. Auburn has a very quality team. I wouldn't say, I don't know where they're ranked in like preseason rankings right now, but what did you say? They're probably a top 20 team on paper going into the year, top 15 in that range.
Yeah, I would have to assume most people would have had them in that 15 to 20 range, 10 to 20 range probably, prior to yesterday.
Yeah. Yeah. So 10 to 20 range. Obviously, very good team. Todd Pettiford and returns, and they have some other some high
Kevin
level
Overton,
trends.
Keyshawn Hall,
Yes.
bringing
All
in Murphy from
yeah. Kevin
Mississippi
Overton, I
State.
know, is over there now and stuff. So
That's
very
for
again
Michigan.
capable team. SEC is going to be very good again. So we'll see how it works out. But very excited. This gives us a new storyline here for Auburn to watch as Stephen Pearl takes over for Bruce Pearl. All right. Let's move on to our 2024 class. I didn't know how to phrase this because we've done breakout players, but this isn't breakout players to me. This is just kind of a look back at the 2024 class and players going into year 2 of college basketball and saying, all right, where are we at with a couple of these guys and who are our favorite ones? I have two. You said you had 5 going into it, so we'll dive into all of them. I did want to start with one thing. I saw Jalil Bethea for Alabama, who is in this conversation of players going to their second year, is injured and will be out a substantial amount of time. I did want to mention that because I mean, I'd kind of factored him into what Alabama wanted to do this year. He coming over from Miami, averaging 7 points per game, didn't like play a ton, and Miami was awful last year. But someone that Nate Oates obviously wanted to bring in as a sophomore shooting guard and kind of play. But he's someone from the 2024 class we're not going to get to see, at least not from the way it sounded, not at least until like January, February, best case scenario. So that sucked.
Yeah, no, Jalil is somebody that I was actually as well looking forward to. Kind of one of those situations where new environment might lend to positive results. As with a couple of these guys coming in that we're going to be talking about here in the future. But yeah, but Jalil was kind of on his way to being somebody that was worth paying attention to this season.
Yeah. All right. Who do you got first? Who do we want to talk about first in this 2024 class?
Well, let's start with Jaden Quaintance. I mean, he started off this past year Arizona State. Now he's coming over to Kentucky, coming off a knee injury. There's kind of speculative timeline as to when he'll actually fully be back into playing. It looks like he's already, in practices doing some non-contact stuff, and we'll see how that continues to progress to, full contact and playing time and all that heading into the season. What Quaintance brings is the defensive presence, which is just off the charts. 2.6 blocks, 1.1 steals per game last year at Arizona State. 30 minutes a game that he played for them. And he's still only 18 years old heading into his sophomore year right now. So super unique when it comes to his age. They listed him, I believe, like 6'10", 240, maybe on the site. He's probably a little closer in the 6'8", 6'9" range to that. But he is an absolute unique mover when it comes to his size and abilities. He's got electric pop when it comes to his athleticism. Able to get off the floor quickly, but he's also able to move, slide, turn his hips, and guard. One of the rare guys that at his size and length and strength with his plus wingspan as well, he can slide with perimeter-based forwards, drop down, and actually protect the rim when it comes to either weak side shot blocking or straight up defensive ability. He's got really, really unique physical skills when it comes to defense. And then offensively, kind of a unique player as well. It's going to be interesting to see what he does at this Kentucky. Last year they played two bigs a lot with Amari Williams and Andrew Carr. kind of in this Andrew Carr role of being somebody who's able to facilitate and be an offensive hub. I think that Jaden Quaintance I saw in high school when he was either playing at Word of God or with USA Basketball or at other places, an ability to kind of process and make a play with the ball in his hand. You can set him up as a central hub in the half court and let him make a play, make a read for his teammates. So I'm going to be very interested to see how in the spacing in this in the spacing systems that Mark Pope employs, how he uses Jaden Quaintance to get the most kind of out of his abilities of being able to kind of handle and process and set up other players, as well as finishing at the rim with his explosive athleticism.
Yeah, I mean, he was the number 5 player on Rivals in the 2024 class. Like you said, the defense is what stands out, and I'm excited to see him, like you said, at Kentucky, where there'll be a ton of shooting around him. There's going to be a ton of playmaking. Like I think if you just get and I'm not trying to shortchange him, but if you just get an elite defensive player and an athlete on offense that has good feel, that can kind of um, play his role, I think this is like a perfect fit for him in terms of not having to try to do too much on the court and just really letting his athleticism and feel carry him a bit. He's the one I want to see on this Kentucky team, really, because the expectations are so high. And they have they have plenty of playmakers and shooters and stuff, but this is one for me that in the front court especially can make some plays. All right. I have 2 that I really want to talk about. The first will be Flory Badunga. And Flory is someone who I wouldn't say exploded onto the scene last year. Came onto the scene, especially once injuries started hitting Kansas, and he had to get thrown into the fire a bit more. But to me, and I'm obviously you saw him as a recruit as well. What made him so exciting when I saw him on the AAU circuit on Adidas was that Indiana elite team fed him and then just put a bunch of shooters around him, and he was absolutely unbelievable in terms of just like, okay, cool, I don't have to process much. I'm either going to dunk it or score on somebody, or I'm going to spray out to Cooper Koch, who we talked about last time, who shoots like 43% of 3, or was it Trent Perry? No, maybe was it Trent Perry or someone else? One of the other guards.
Yeah.
All these other guards on Indiana Lee, and I was like, okay, I see it. Goes to Kansas, and the reason why I don't think he's like an NBA guy in terms of like right now is because he's just not that tall. Like what would you say he is? Probably 6'7", six
Um, I,
eight.
yeah, I don't think 6'8's egregious, especially with his length, and he's a really, really athletic person.
Yeah, so that's what makes it challenging. Like if you positionally put him at the 5, he's not the tallest, but dude, the explosion ability on dunks, on blocks, on rebounds. Like he averaged 1.6 blocks per game last year on a limited minutes situation, and I just really am high on him at Kansas next year being a great role player for that team. He's not going to be Hunter Dickinson. He's not going to be these guys that command the ball in the post 15 times a game, but I just really think as a lob threat, as a shot blocker, and an energy guy, I like it because in college that's kind of what you need at times. You don't There were times where Hunter Dickinson's offense got kind of stale. And I'm not saying Flory's going to average anything close to what did, but the energy matters to me. The energy and what he does at the rim on both sides matters to me, and that's what I'm excited to see. So Flory Badunga, one of my favorite players in the 2024 class.
Well, yeah, when it comes to Flory, what I'm very interested to see, he's going to bring a different, as you said, a very different dynamic. Defensively, his ability to slide his feet and move, be a lot of switchability and stuff they're able to do creatively on the defensive end at Kansas, but also him in the pick and roll with Darren Peterson is going to be fascinating to watch. His ability to kind of set that screen up top and then just put immense amount of pressure on the front of the rim, which kind of pulls gravity. You have to stay connected to him, whether he's either in the dunker spot on the opposite side of the pick and roll or the actual roll man on the pick and roll. You have to stay connected with him, or he's going to be wide open. Even if you do stay connected, I mean, his ability, his quick leaping, his twitch to get over top of people is pretty substantial as well. So seeing him at Kansas this year in that pick and roll system with Darren Peterson, what he's able to bring and the different looks they're able to do on defense will be fascinating to watch. I agree with you. I think he's definitely one to be on there.
I need Kansas to do what Duke does and hold the combine for their players. I want to see what Flory's vertical is.
It's
That's
pretty
just what I
substantial.
need.
He's a high school soccer player.
It's-
Yeah,
yeah,
played forward in high school.
yeah, I need to see that. So, all right, who else you got?
Isaiah Evans is next up for me. Speaking of Duke, he's former McDonald's All-American, 6'6" wing, a sniper. He's somebody who last year kind of wasn't able to quite get his consistent footing within the lineup. Connington Nipple, Cooper Flag, lottery picks in this year's draft and everything. But he was able to still carve out his role with his shooting in ACC play. He played 15 minutes a game, 6.5 points on 4.2 3-point attempts per game, 39.5% shooting from three. He's a sniper. He's a shooter. He's somebody who a microwave, as people have called him in the past, can really get rolling. And once he sees the first one go through second, third, fourth, fifth, and can get them up quickly. It'll be interesting to see how he carves out his role on this year's team. Last year, he wasn't asked to do very much outside of shoot. So there wasn't much creation. There wasn't much, on the defensive side, rebounding and everything too. If he makes his first shot, he stays in for a second and third, and gets it going. And he was able to do that last year with the construct of the team. This year, he's going to be a little bit more of a focal point. He's going to be looked at by NBA draft, NBA personnel, and see kind of, is he willing to take that next step up to be able to do more than just shoot and get hot. But the tool that he brings, the single tool that he brings, his kind of, his superpower, so to speak, is one of the most valuable tools within the game of basketball when it comes to shooting. And the way that he shoots, the elevation he gets, the high release point, the consistency of the release makes his shot incredibly hard to block. Not only that, he draws a ton of fouls because of the high release and how high he gets his shot consistently, with a defender scrambling to stay connected as he comes around screens and moves off the ball. I'm very fascinated to see if he's able to take that step. I'm very fascinated to see if he's able to be the focal point of the offense, if he's able to be at the very top of a scouting report and still kind of what he puts out as a player. As I said, former McDonald's All-American, he's had 60-plus point outputs in the playoffs in high school and everything, and he had some big games in college this past year. As I said, 4.2 3-point attempts per game at a 39.6% clip in ACC play. He can shoot the ball. He can really shoot the ball. Now, as he moves up that scouting report, as he moves to the top of that scouting report, what does that look like? I'm very fascinated to see Isaiah Evans this season for Duke.
Yeah, the number 27 ranked player on Rivals in last year's class, and I feel like I saw, maybe this was just Twitter, but I feel like I saw people clamoring for him to be on the court more last year. Now, the hard part was that, like you said, you had Khan and these NBA dudes in front of him, so it made it difficult. But every time he was on the court, to me, I was like, yeah, that guy can shoot the lights out the ball, and it's incredible that they were able to have him like as a not reserve, but like a real bench guy with how awesome of a scorer and shooter he is. So
Mm-hmm.
very excited to see him in a more impactful role this year for Duke. I like that pick a lot. But not as much as I like this pick, Jamie. This is my favorite player in college basketball right here, and it is Tahad Pettiford. I know we talked about Auburn starting the show, and so I don't think this really changes anything in terms of who the coach is because Tahad Pettiford is going to do what he wants to do on the basketball court, and that is get shots up, but then also he reminds me of those and one days. And I know I'm young, but like I even remember those and one days to a degree. Like it just the era of basketball in 2000 where it was like, all right, the handle is so smooth that he gets away with it in different ways. Like he does things you don't really see on a basketball court usually. And then the shooting off the dribble, like it's very 2000s ish to me, everything like the way he plays. And then I'll never forget, and I don't remember what game it was, but I was watching it and he goes and hits like two or three offhand floaters, and he's so ambidextrous at times. I'm like, this is one of the most skilled like players in college basketball as a freshman. It was so obvious. And while he was streaky, I think to start the year, like there were ups and downs, obviously. I feel like as the year went on, you actually got a pretty consistent version. You knew what you were going to get from Pettiford time and time out. And that's not to say he wasn't going to have like an occasional like 4 point games or something, but when he was on the court, it felt like he was in more control as the year went on. And that's what really made them dangerous because you have a guy who can go off for 20 points if you give him space, which he did in the NCAA tournament. And then he also, I think, got better as an actual point guard, like an actual distributor, an actual ball handler, and everything. And so he was fantastic to watch. I think I tweeted about him probably like 10 times because just how much fun I had watching him. And I don't tweet a ton in terms of like in game stuff, but like I would tweet out clips and stuff like that. So all of this to say, I'm not surprised that he didn't come out for the NBA draft. There was some chatter. I didn't fully see it in terms of being like a top 20 guy, 25 guy, because he is kind of small. And I think I need to see him in a larger role for Auburn this year. Kind of similar to, I think, another guy we're going to talk about here. But man, he is so fun to watch. And I cannot wait to see him this year with the ball in his hands even more and making plays for this Auburn team. So, Tahad Pettiford, love him. Excited to see him. That's my guy.
Yeah, man, he's absolute electricity. His ability to manufacture offense, self-create, clean looks for himself in the half court. It was huge for Auburn this past year. It's going to be interesting to see the step he takes. As you said, last year, a lot of the stuff was kind of an off ball, maybe even off the bench role
Mm-hmm.
for him, to where he was able to just kind of come in and just kind of go get his. What he looks like, kind of streamlined his game as a primary with the ball in his hands. His ability to create clean looks on the offensive end of the floor was actually unique in the college game this past year. At any point in time, it felt like he was able to get not only a look, but a clean look at the rim in the half court. And he's that kind of always had that electric appeal to his game.
Yeah, fun player, fun player. All right, where you going?
Another one I'm intrigued. I'm not entirely sure of the national implications. The two I've talked about previously, Jaden Quaintance, Kentucky, Isaiah Evans, Duke. Top 10 type teams and kind of around that range. I'm not entirely sure this is going to be what the national relevance of this
It's all
team
right.
is
Go
going
off
to
the
be.
radar, Jamie.
Yeah, but Donnie Freeman at Syracuse
Yeah,
is somebody that I'm very, very fascinated to see. I feel like this past year, he only played a handful of games, maybe 15 or so,
at
prior to
14. Yeah,
getting injured. But it felt like he was really coming into his own right as the injury set in. Over his last 8 games, I believe it was 14.4 points, 7 rebounds, and he was shooting 45% from the three on almost 2.5 3-point attempts per game. 6'9", 6'10". There's positional fluidity that kind of comes into play there with his length and his skill set. Obviously, as we know, a lot of people say in years past, year one to year two is the biggest growth in a player's development. Very eager to see what that looks like. Kind of as there was a little pit stop with an injury here with him that made him miss the last half of the season. But I'm very interested to see what his offseason looked like coming into this year. As I had said, he was kind of coming into his own as a player, kind of figuring out what he could do to stretch the floor, finish at the basket, and his role within the Syracuse offense. Now, he's not going to be a surprise to people. He's probably going to be stronger. He's probably going to be more confident in what he brings to the table. How does he react again? Like we said earlier, with Isaiah Evans being further up the list on the scouting report. With people understanding what his go tos are, what counters has he developed within his game? At 6'9", 6'10", with that type of length that he has, he checks a lot of the boxes the highest levels look for within the game, especially with that 45% shooting from three over his last 8 games on 2.5 attempts per game. He checks a lot of those boxes. How does he show up? He's almost an out of sight, out of mind type of guy. He was building traction for himself, then got injured, and you didn't hear really much about him, and you hadn't really heard much about him leading into this upcoming season. This is a big year for Syracuse. They're going to have a
yeah,
lot of eyes on him. Obviously, Cayenne Anthony's coming in, retooled their roster a little bit, but Donnie Freeman's going to be a player that has as much upside as anybody. Um, and what does he do? What steps does he take coming out of this injury, heading into this season for that Syracuse program? I'm going to be fascinated to watch.
yes. Syracuse should be. I want to say substantially better, but they should be better. They went 7-13 in conference last year and did 115 in Ken Palm. Like this is a team that should be at least like top 75 in the country, I would think this year. I think there's enough talent here. Like you said, I like betting on Donnie Freeman, former number 6 player in the country. Uh, just a dude oozing with talent. Very excited to see him. All right, your last one here. We'll go here and wrap it up.
So I got two more.
Oh,
Two
keep
more.
going then. Keep.
I'll go quickly with both of them, but I do want to mention them both. Another one that's a little bit off the beaten path. He's a transfer, Mustafa Tiem.
Oh yeah.
I think Mustafa's 7'1". He was at UCF this past year. He transferred this summer to Cincinnati. I think he's possibly the best, or at least in the conversation, his best rim protector in the college game coming up this upcoming season. 2.6 blocks per game led the league, led his league this past season, and in conference play this past year, 12 points, 52% from the field. He also shot 31% from three at 7'1". Now, obviously, the 3-point shooting is not um,
It's a
but
work in
it's showing,
progress.
yes, it's showing capable of, it's
Yeah.
showing the touch, showing the abilities that
Yeah.
he has. Super thin player, but he's got a very unique, as we talked about previously, and you hear me mention this a lot, his movement. Very unique mover for a player at his size, his ability to slide his feet, turn his hips. He can guard along the perimeter, switch down, protect the rim, both weak side and straight on. Just natural timing, great length, and he runs the floor incredibly well, too. What he brings on the offensive end will continue to be growth. But again, like I said, in Big 12 play this past year, 12 points on 52% from the field. So there's some efficiency and there's some growth there as well. But he is one of the best. He's in the conversation for one of the best defensive bigs in the country. I'm very eager to see what he brings to Cincinnati.
If he
Um,
works out, I do feel like there is like NBA upside. Maybe I don't know if this after this year, maybe after next year, maybe like I do feel like there is that because he is a shot blocker at this level. We've seen shot blockers kind of stick in the NBA, even if they're a work in progress in other ways. And I think if he moves well enough, I do think there's like actual NBA potential here. And there's NBA potential with all the guys we talked about pretty much, but he is one that I think is, like you said, kind of under the radar, despite having a really strong freshman season at UCF. And I'm interested to see how he does this season.
Yeah, no, 100%. And NBA scouts will firmly have their eyes on him. They did through the last half of this past season. He made a decision to come back to school, and they're going to start the
Yeah.
year off and have the full time here. And the other one I'm mentioning is Darion Reed, another transfer. He played this past year at Alabama, going now to Oklahoma. Couldn't quite ever find his footing at Alabama for whatever reasons it was, but he did show the flashes. And the
Yes.
3 starts he had, 8 points per game this past year. Still super young for his grade and class. And this is one of those guys of the, nobody was wrong in this situation, but a new scenery could be great for all parties. And you have Darion Reed coming into Oklahoma this upcoming season, a former McDonald's All-American, a quick processor, ball in hand, 6'7", able to get up and down the floor very quickly, got great length.
Yep.
And as I mentioned, he's a quick processor, ball in hand. He can make decisions. You can put the ball in his hands at various levels of the floor, whether it be off the rebound, pushing the break, whether it be in the half court, from the wing, flashing toward the high post. And he can put pressure on the defense with that. Got great
Yeah.
frame, great length, turns defense quickly into offense. He's able to aggressively play up the line on the defensive end of the floor, get out in transition, finish on the break. And, just overall charismatic player. He's going to have a lot of opportunity at Oklahoma to come in and be the guy. And I'm very eager to see what that looks like. Transitioning, within league, going from Alabama to Oklahoma, but I'm very interested to see what it looks like with him as as kind of a primary guy in a familiar role that he had throughout high school and continued growth in his game.
Yeah. The flashes that he showed at Alabama last year were really exciting. Kind of similar to Evans. It was like, damn, why isn't this guy playing more? And then you remember they have like 7 guys that are all seniors and really good. And so excited for Darion Reed. Yeah, that's a really good group. We could go down the list of all these 2024s and shout all them out. It was a really strong class. I don't track this, but it was a really strong NBA draft class. Like to have the whole, top 4 go basically 1 through 4. And then to have all these guys down, like obviously Trey Johnson and Con Knipple, Carter Bryant, and so Liam McNeely and stuff. A really strong NBA class. So I'm in. Like this was a. Would you say this was a really strong class? Like in general, the 2024 class. This is one of the better ones of
Well,
the
the
2020s.
2025 draft, I mean, 8 of the top 10 players drafted were one and done players, freshmen from the
Yeah,
college ranks, 17 total in the first round. Of 25 college players were taken, 17 of them were freshmen in college, one and done types. So,
I mean that's got to
uh,
be one of the best classes of at least since 2020.
yeah. So in recent memory, obviously, one and dones are a trend.
Yeah.
Last year, the one and done, the freshman class was the most in the past handful of years.
And then we got the guys that we talked about, obviously, that were all coming back, and we're excited to see another guy like Ian Jackson, who I think we talked about before with St. John's, but like just another explosive point guard. So there you go. All right, appreciate y'all for joining us. Leave a like, comment, share, subscribe if you haven't already. We're working to get another coach interview on here in the coming weeks. We'll see if we can lock that down. But yeah, let us know what you think. Let us know what player you're excited to see in the 2024 class. And we will, yeah, talk to y'all again on Friday. So yeah, talk to you then.
Matthew, I appreciate it.
Yes, sir.